Sarah Martinez stared at her laptop screen, the blue glow casting hollow shadows under her eyes at 11:47 p.m. in her cramped Seoul studio apartment. The marketing report was due tomorrow, but her mind felt wrapped in cotton. She'd managed 6 hours of sleep the night before, technically adequate according to every wellness article she'd bookmarked, yet exhaustion clung to her bones like fog. Her reflection in the black computer screen revealed what she'd been avoiding: puffy cheeks, a softness around her jawline that hadn't been there 2 years ago when she'd moved to Korea for work. The gym membership card in her wallet mocked her. 3 months unused, despite her best intentions and the Korean co-workers who somehow maintained their lean frames while eating rice with every meal. The porcelain teacup on her desk sat empty, a relic from her grandmother's kitchen that she'd brought from California. Tonight, like most nights, it had held instant coffee instead of the gentle barley tea her Korean neighbors seemed to prefer. Sarah touched its smooth rim, remembering how her grandmother had always served small portions in small dishes, never rushing through meals. Her phone buzzed with a text from her college friend Jessica. "Still up? You're killing yourself with those hours." Sarah typed back a laughing emoji, but nothing felt funny. The marketing director position demanded everything. Late nights, early mornings, client dinners that left her stomach churning with rich food and anxiety. Through her thin apartment walls, she could hear Mrs. Kim, her elderly neighbor, moving quietly in the kitchen. It was nearly midnight, yet the sounds were deliberate, peaceful, no microwave beeping, no rustling of takeout containers, just the soft clink of ceramic and the whisper of water being poured. Last week, Sarah had glimpsed Mrs. Kim's morning routine through her window. The older woman sitting on her heated ondol floor, in perfect posture, hands resting on her knees, breathing slowly while steam rose from a small cup. No yoga mat, no expensive equipment, just 20 minutes of stillness that seemed to center her entire day. Sarah's American mind rebelled against such simplicity. Real results require real effort, she thought, echoing every fitness influencer she followed. Yet Mrs. Kim moved through her 80s with a straight spine and bright eyes, while Sarah, at 32, felt ancient. The laptop screen dimmed automatically, casting the room into shadow. Sarah's reflection disappeared, but she could still feel the weight in her midsection, the tension in her shoulders, the restlessness that no amount of scrolling or productivity seemed to cure. She picked up her grandmother's cup, turning it slowly in her hands. Such a small thing, barely holding 6 ounces. Nothing like the oversized coffee mug she'd grown accustomed to, the ones that promised energy but delivered only jitters and crashes. Tomorrow, she decided, she would ask Mrs. Kim about her morning ritual. Not because she believed in miracle cures, but because something in the older woman's quiet confidence suggested a different relationship with time, with the body, with the simple act of being awake in the world. The Seoul night stretched beyond her window, a city of 10 million people, many of whom seemed to carry themselves with a lightness Sarah had forgotten how to feel. If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar, and stay with us for the next chapters. The next morning, Sarah found herself standing outside Mrs. Kim's door at 6:30 a.m., clutching her empty teacup and feeling ridiculous. The hallway smelled of miso and something fermented that she couldn't identify, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar to her American palate. Mrs. Kim answered, wearing a simple hanbok-style top and loose pants, her silver hair pulled back neatly. Her eyes registered no surprise at finding a neighbor at her door so early. "You want to learn morning tea?" Mrs. Kim asked in careful English, noticing the cup in Sarah's hands. Yes, Sarah stammered. "I've been watching you through the window. Not spying, just... You seem so peaceful." Mrs. Kim smiled and gestured her inside. The apartment was a mirror image of Sarah's layout, but felt completely different. Minimal furniture sat low to the ground. No clutter covered the surfaces. Light filtered through simple white curtains, and the ondel-heated floor radiated gentle warmth through Sarah's socks. "Sit," Mrs. Kim instructed, indicating a spot on the floor near a low wooden table. Sarah lowered herself awkwardly, her hip flexors protesting from years of desk work. "Mrs." Kim settled across from her with fluid grace, spine naturally erect, shoulders relaxed. "In Korea, we start day with quiet," Mrs. Kim explained, preparing 2 cups of roasted barley tea. "Not checking phone, not thinking tomorrow. Just here." Sarah's phone vibrated in her pocket, probably work emails already piling up. Her instinct was to check, but Mrs. Kim's calm attention kept her still. "Your body very tense," Mrs. Kim observed, pouring the pale golden tea. "Always fighting something." The question hit uncomfortably close. Sarah was always fighting. Deadlines, cravings, her body's resistance to the gym, the scale that crept upward despite her efforts. She'd been at war with herself for years, viewing discipline as a muscle that needed constant flexing. "I guess I am," Sarah admitted. Mrs. Kim handed her the tea in a cup similar to her grandmother's, but even smaller. "This is Korean way. Small cup, drink slowly. Tea is warm, you are warm. No fight needed." The tea tasted nutty and mild, nothing like the bitter coffee that usually jolted her awake. Mrs. Kim demonstrated the posture, sitting bones grounded, spine long, shoulders soft. Not meditation exactly, just conscious presence. "Every morning, 20 minutes, Mrs. Kim continued. "Body remembers how to be calm. Then day is different." Sarah tried to copy the position, feeling her core muscles engage automatically. It wasn't exercise, but her body was working in a way it never did, slouched at her desk or collapsed on her couch. "But don't you get behind?" Sarah asked. 20 minutes could be productivity time." Mrs. Kim laughed gently. "Behind what? Body that cannot rest, cannot work well. Mind that always runs, crashes like old car." Through the window, Seoul was waking up. The distant hum of traffic, the early commuters heading to subway stations. But inside Mrs. Kim's apartment, time moved differently. Sarah felt her nervous system downshifting, her breath deepening without effort. When the 20 minutes ended, Sarah was surprised by how alert she felt. Not the artificial alertness of caffeine, but a kind of clarity she hadn't experienced in months. "Tomorrow, same time?" Mrs. Kim asked, refilling Sarah's small cup. Walking back to her apartment, Sarah's grandmother's cup felt different in her hands. Not just a vessel for rushed coffee, but a tool for creating space in her life. She thought of Mrs. Kim's words about the body remembering calmness and wondered what other memories her nervous system might be storing and what it might be possible to unlearn. 3 weeks into her morning ritual with Mrs. Kim, Sarah noticed her first small victory. She was sleeping through the night, not perfectly, not every night, but more often than she had in 2 years. The 20 minutes of seated stillness seemed to be training her nervous system to find quiet, and that training was carrying into her sleep. But at work, her new routine was attracting attention. "You're different lately," her colleague Marcus observed during their lunch break at a nearby Korean restaurant. "Less frantic." Sarah looked down at her meal, a simple set of banchan side dishes, a small portion of rice and grilled fish. Without thinking, she'd been eating more slowly, putting down her chopsticks between bites the way she'd watched Mrs. Kim do. "I've been trying some Korean wellness practices," Sarah explained carefully. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Kimchi detox? Please tell me you're not falling for that exoticism stuff." Heat rose in Sarah's cheeks. Was that what this was? She thought of Mrs. Kim's practical wisdom about posture and portion size, the way the older woman treated her body like a trusted friend rather than an enemy to be conquered. "It's just about slowing down," Sarah said. "Slowing down doesn't get promotions," Marcus replied, attacking his oversized bibimbap. "You know Davidson is watching us all for the senior director position. This isn't the time to go zen." That afternoon, Sarah found herself torn between Mrs. Kim's gentle rhythms and the aggressive pace her career demanded. During a video conference that ran past 8 p.m., she caught herself hunching forward, shoulders climbing toward her ears, her breath becoming shallow. The old Sarah would have grabbed takeout on the way home, eaten it while answering emails, and fallen asleep with her laptop still warm beside her. Instead, she stopped at the small market near her apartment building, the one where the elderly Korean shopkeeper always arranged his vegetables with careful attention. "Making dinner?" he asked in English, noticing her selecting ingredients for a simple soup. "Trying to," Sarah replied. "I'm learning to cook Korean style." He smiled and handed her a small container of homemade kimchi. For digestion, Korean food is about balance: sour, spicy, mild, not too much of anything. At home, Sarah prepared a simple meal using the small dishes Mrs. Kim had shown her. Each banchan side dish got its own tiny plate, creating a rainbow of colors and flavors. The rice filled only half of her grandmother's porcelain bowl, a portion that would have seemed insufficient a month ago but now felt complete. She ate sitting on her floor, laptop closed, phone face down. The act of eating became a meditation of sorts. The texture of fermented vegetables, the warmth of miso broth, the satisfaction of chewing slowly and tasting each element. Her American mind still resisted the simplicity. Where was the protein shake, the complex meal prep, the optimization? But her body was responding to this gentler approach in ways that aggressive dieting never achieved. Her clothes felt looser, not from dramatic weight loss, but from reduced inflammation and bloating. Later that evening, her friend Jessica called from Los Angeles. "You sound different," Jessica said. "Calmer or something. Are you seeing someone?" Sarah laughed. "I'm seeing a 78-year-old Korean woman who's teaching me how to sit still." "That's weird, but okay. Whatever works. The last time we talked, you sounded like you were about to snap." After hanging up, Sarah prepared her evening tea in her grandmother's cup. Steam rose in delicate spirals, and she realized that Mrs. Kim had been right about the body remembering. Her nervous system was learning a different default setting, one that didn't require constant vigilance and self-criticism. The promotion Marcus had mentioned still mattered, but not at the expense of the quiet strength she was building 20 minutes at a time. Would you rather force yourself with willpower, or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you, and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. The test came 6 weeks later, when Sarah's company announced a major client presentation. 3 days in Tokyo, back-to-back meetings, and the kind of schedule that would have sent the old Sarah into a tailspin of stress eating and sleepless nights. "This is your chance to show leadership," her boss explained. "Davidson will be watching how you handle the pressure." Sarah packed her grandmother's teacup, wrapped carefully in a soft sweater, along with a small container of barley tea Mrs. Kim had prepared for her. Her colleagues packed energy drinks and sleeping pills. Tokyo hit her like a wave of sensory overload: neon signs, crowds, the constant hum of the world's largest city. Their hotel was luxurious but sterile, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. Sarah's first instinct was to collapse into old patterns: order room service, work until midnight, wake up groggy. Instead, she found space on the hotel room floor for her morning ritual. 20 minutes sitting in proper posture, sipping tea from her grandmother's cup, while Tokyo hummed 20 stories below. Her American colleagues would think she was crazy if they knew, but she could feel her nervous system settling, preparing for the challenges ahead. The first day of meetings was brutal. Presentations in Japanese with translators, cultural nuances she was still learning to navigate, and the constant pressure to prove herself worthy of advancement. But something had changed in how she moved through stress. At lunch, While Marcus and the other Americans loaded up at the hotel buffet, Sarah found herself naturally drawn to smaller portions, eating slowly despite the time pressure. Her digestive system, trained by months of Korean-style meals, felt stable instead of churning with anxiety. "You're not eating much," Marcus observed. "Nervous about this afternoon's presentation?" "Just pacing myself," Sarah replied. That evening, exhausted but still wired, she prepared her tea ritual in the hotel room. The porcelain cup felt like an anchor to everything Mrs. Kim had taught her about treating the body as an ally rather than an obstacle to push through. Her phone rang. Mrs. Kim calling from Seoul. "How is Tokyo?" the older woman asked. "Overwhelming," Sarah admitted. "I keep wanting to fall back into old habits, stay up late, drink too much coffee, eat my stress." "Body, remember what you teach it," Mrs. Kim said gently. 3 months of morning quiet is now part of you. Trust what you built. The second day brought their biggest presentation. Sarah's section focused on market analysis for Korean consumer trends, and she found herself drawing not just from data, but from the cultural understanding she'd gained through her friendship with Mrs. Kim. Her insights about Korean values around balance and long-term thinking impressed the Japanese clients. "Where did that come from?" her boss asked afterward. "You spoke like someone who really understands the culture." That night, Sarah realized something profound had shifted. The promotion, the recognition, the external validation. They still mattered, but they no longer felt like life or death struggles. Her worth wasn't tied to performing exhaustion as dedication. On the flight back to Seoul, Marcus dozed fitfully, his body still jacked up on caffeine and stress hormones. Sarah sat quietly, watching the sunset through the airplane window, her grandmother's cup carefully stowed in her carry-on. She thought about her old self, the one who would have used this business trip as an excuse to abandon every healthy habit, then spent weeks trying to get back on track through willpower and self-criticism. That version of discipline had been about force and punishment. What Mrs. Kim had taught her was about cultivation and patience. When the plane touched down at Incheon Airport, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced after work travel in years. She felt like herself. Tired but not depleted, challenged but not broken, changed but not performing change for anyone else's approval. The teacup in her bag held the warmth of a practice that was no longer foreign or exotic, but simply part of who she was becoming. 2 months after returning from Tokyo, Sarah found herself in an unexpected place. Her doctor's office in Gangnam, staring at lab results that made her question everything she thought she knew about health and transformation. "Your inflammatory markers are significantly lower," Dr. Park explained in careful English, pointing to numbers on her blood work. "Blood pressure improved. Sleep quality indicators much better. What have you been doing differently?" Sarah hesitated. How could she explain that sitting on the floor for 20 minutes each morning and eating from smaller dishes had apparently rewired her biochemistry more effectively than 2 years of intense gym sessions and restrictive diets? "I've been learning some Korean lifestyle practices," she said carefully. "Nothing dramatic, just slowing down." Dr. Park nodded approvingly. "Western medicine always wants quick fix, big change. Korean approach is different. Small adjustments, long time, work with body, not against." That evening, Sarah sat across from Mrs. Kim for their usual tea, but tonight felt different. The older woman studied her with knowing eyes. "You understand now?" Mrs. Kim asked. "Understand what?" "That discipline is not about fighting yourself. It's about building life where healthy choice is easy choice." The words hit Sarah like a revelation. For years, she'd believed that transformation required suffering, that she needed to be stronger, more controlled, more willing to deprive herself. Every diet had been about restriction, every workout about punishment for perceived failures. But Mrs. Kim's approach had been about architecture, not willpower, The morning ritual created a foundation of calm that influenced every decision afterward. The smaller dishes naturally regulated portions without feeling restrictive. The slower eating pace allowed her body's satiety signals to function properly. The floor sitting strengthened her core and improved her posture without formal exercise. "I kept waiting for it to be harder," Sarah admitted. "For the real discipline to kick in." Mrs. Kim smiled. "Americans think discipline means saying no to body. Korean way is teaching body to want good things." That night, Sarah called Jessica in Los Angeles. "You sound completely different," Jessica said. "Like fundamentally different. What happened to the stressed-out workaholic I used to know?" "She's still here," Sarah laughed, "but she learned that she doesn't have to white-knuckle her way through life." "Okay, but seriously, how much weight have you lost? You look amazing in your photos." Sarah paused, realizing she hadn't weighed herself in weeks. The scale had become irrelevant when her clothes fit better, her energy felt stable, and her relationship with food shifted from anxiety to appreciation. "I don't know the number," she said, "but I know I feel like I'm living in my body instead of fighting it." 3 days later, Marcus cornered her in the office kitchen. "I need to know what you're doing," he said, looking frazzled. "You got the promotion to senior director. You look great. You seem happy. Meanwhile, I'm falling apart. What's your secret?" Sarah looked at her colleague, someone who'd mocked her Zen phase just months earlier, and felt compassion rather than vindication. She thought of Mrs. Kim's generosity in sharing her morning ritual with a confused American neighbor. "It's not a secret," Sarah said. "It's just a different way of thinking about discipline." She told him about the 20-minute morning practice, the small dishes, the emphasis on sustainability over intensity. Marcus listened with the desperation of someone who'd tried every hack and optimization, but had never considered that the problem might be the very concept of hacking health. "That's it?" he asked skeptically. "Sit on the floor and eat from tiny bowls." "Try it for a month," Sarah suggested. "Not to lose weight or prove anything, just to see what happens when you stop treating your body like an enemy." That night, preparing her evening tea in her grandmother's cup, Sarah recognized the profound shift that had occurred. She was no longer someone who sometimes practiced Korean wellness habits. She was someone whose life had been restructured around principles of balance, patience, and respect for the body's wisdom. The promotion was gratifying, but it felt like a natural consequence of showing up as her best self, rather than the desperate goal that once defined her worth. 1 year later, Sarah stood in her grandmother's old kitchen in Monterey, California, unpacking boxes after her transfer to the company's West Coast headquarters. The promotion had come with the opportunity to lead the Asian market division from the US, a role that perfectly combined her business skills with the cultural understanding she'd gained in Korea. Her grandmother's porcelain teacup sat on the counter, no longer an antique, but a daily-use vessel that had traveled across the Pacific and back. Beside it, she arranged the small ceramic dishes Mrs. Kim had given her as a farewell gift, each one designed to hold a perfect portion of Banchan's side dishes. Her sister Rachel arrived to help with unpacking, stopping short when she saw Sarah's careful arrangement of the kitchen. "You've really changed," Rachel said, watching Sarah prepare a simple lunch using the Korean cooking techniques she'd learned. "You move differently, like you're not rushing toward some finish line anymore." "I learned that there is no finish line," Sarah replied, heating barley tea in a small pot. "Just daily practice." Her phone buzzed with a video call from Mrs. Kim, now a weekly tradition that bridged the time zones between California and Seoul. "How is new home, Mrs. Kim asked, her familiar face filling the screen. "Different, but the practice travels well," Sarah said, showing her the tea setup on the American kitchen counter. "And young Marcus, he's still doing morning sitting?" Sarah smiled. Before leaving Seoul, she'd connected Marcus with Mrs. Kim, and the unlikely friendship had become a source of healing for her former colleague. His transformation had been slower and messier than Sarah's, more resistance, more backsliding, but he was learning the same fundamental lesson about working with the body rather than against it. He's doing well, still complaining about sitting on the floor, but his blood pressure is down, and he's sleeping better. That evening, Sarah sat on her apartment balcony overlooking Monterey Bay, her grandmother's cup warming her hands as fog rolled in from the Pacific. California friends would be arriving soon for dinner, and she'd prepared a fusion meal that honored both her Korean education and her American roots. The woman who'd once measured worth by exhaustion and restriction felt like a different person, not because she'd achieved some perfect state, but because she'd learned to inhabit her body with curiosity rather than criticism. The weight loss had been gradual and sustainable, but more important was the disappearance of the constant internal battle that had consumed so much energy. Dr. Park's words from her final Seoul appointment echoed in her mind. You found Korean secret, not quick fix, but slow fix that lasts whole life. Her doorbell rang as friends arrived for dinner. They'd eat from the small dishes, share stories, and probably comment on how relaxed Sarah seemed compared to her old San Francisco self. Some would ask about her Korean wellness phase, expecting tips and shortcuts. But Sarah had learned that the deepest transformations resist simple explanations. How do you tell someone that health isn't about hacking your body, but about creating space for it to remember its own wisdom? How do you explain that discipline isn't about force, but about designing a life where the kind choice becomes the obvious choice? As her friends gathered around the low table she'd had shipped from Seoul, Sarah poured barley tea into small cups, each person receiving just enough for mindful sipping. The ritual created a pocket of calm in their busy American lives, a reminder that rushing wasn't the only way to move through the world. Later, washing dishes in her grandmother's porcelain cup, Sarah felt the presence of all the women who had shaped her understanding. Her grandmother's patience, Mrs. Kim's wisdom, her own hard-won knowledge that transformation happens through accumulation of small moments rather than dramatic breakthroughs. The cup would be ready for tomorrow morning's tea, and the morning after that, carrying forward an ancient understanding that time and gentleness accomplish what force and haste cannot. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.